How's everybody doing today? Today we're going to do a video which covers advanced access reports, and we're going to be working initially with a database called Bike. I wanted to talk a little bit about relational databases because most of the databases you would encounter in real life in a corporate setting are going to be relational databases. The ones we've used up till now have been referred to more as a flat database file where all the information that we need is in one table, but that's very uncommon for a larger database. Here's an example of a smaller database, but it's still relational. It has a table called Bike Customers, a table called Bike Orders, and a table called Bike Types. Now the reason they break these up is because if I have a customer that buys, say, 8 different bikes, I don't want to have to type in the customer's name and address and phone number 8 different times. I can type it in once, and then I can create a relationship between Bike Customers and Bike Orders. If you want to look at the entire database, I can go to Database Tools and then Relationships. It'll bring up the 3 tables, and what I want to just talk about is how I can set these relationships. If I wanted a relationship between Bike Customers and Bike Orders, I notice I have a customer ID. Now that's a unique number for each customer, and I have a customer ID over in Bike Orders, so I can create that relationship. To create the relationship, it's simple. I just click on my customer ID in my Bike Customers, and I drag it over and drop it off on top of the customer ID in my Bike Orders. I let go. It asks me if I want to do this relationship. I say create, and now I've actually created this relationship. I can do the same thing for product ID between Bike Types and the order. Again, that way if somebody orders 6 different Trek 5000s, I don't have to type in the description and the cost and the supplier each time. I just have the relationship between that information and the order. So I'm just going to click and drag this over to my product ID. I'm going to let go, I'm going to create, and I have that relationship. Now, for the purposes of this course, you don't really have to create relational databases, but we are going to use some of them to make some more advanced reports. So I thought it would just be nice if you knew a little bit about them. I am going to create one report now that's going to be based on this Bikes database. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I just want to bring up the report that we're going to create. We're going to do a report. It's going to be called Bike Customers, and in our previous video, I talked a little bit about grouping. I said we're just going to skip grouping for now, but when we get to the more advanced reports, we will do grouping. So if I look at the nature of this report, I can see it is grouped by customer. For each customer, it shows me the order date and the description and the cost of the bicycle that they purchased. And then it has a subtotal down here, which gives me the total that they spent for all their bikes. So that's the report that we're going to work on. I'm going to go through kind of the steps to do that. You're going to see a lot of similarity between this and the steps that we did with the simpler reports. I'm going to go to Create. I'm going to go to Report Wizard. Really the big difference here is instead of picking all the fields from one table, I pick which fields I need from each table. I know from my customer I need my customer name. I don't really think I needed anything else. I can go back quickly and look, but I think if I get the customer name, I should be all set with this. If I go to Bike Orders, I needed the order date, and then if I go to Bike Types, I needed the description, the cost, and let's see, I guess that's all I needed. I didn't need the supplier. So I say, all right, this is what I need. I go next. Now, it's going to automatically, based on which table you pick, give you a certain breakout. If I select by customer, it breaks out customer name, and it leaves order date, description, and cost down here. If I do the Bike Orders, there's no breakout, and if I do Bike Types, it pulls out description and cost. Basically what it'll do is it'll take the fields from whichever table you select and pull them out for the grouping. I really want this grouped on customer, so I'm going to select the first table. I hit next. It says, do you need any additional levels of sorting and grouping? I don't, so I'm going to go next. Do I want to sort this? I'm going to skip over that. If you remember, when we were doing simple reports, we just used the default, which was stepped for the layout. For these, we do use outline. Outline works much better for relational reports. I'm going to hit next. It's going to be called Bike Customers. I'm going to hit finish. And I have a pretty decent approximation of what I want here. It did break it out by customers. And if I kind of bounce back and forth and look, I notice I do not have a subtotal. Okay, it does not automatically do that, but it did break it out by customer. It did give me the title. What I want to do is I want to go play with this a little bit. I'm going to close this window, and that's going to put me into design. Now, we talked about on the simple reports how you can move things around and how you can go and you can change the fonts and things like that. So I'm not going to redo that. What I wanted to do is focus on the new stuff. How do we get this subtotal that's here? I need that in my report, and I wanted a line above it to kind of differentiate it. So I wanted to talk about that. To do that, you go up to Group and Sort. You go up to this icon up here. You click on it, and then it's going to produce this little window down here. I only have one group, which is my customer. So it says customer ID here, group on customer ID. So I say, okay. What I want to do is I want to click more to give me more options. Right now, I have no totals. I'm going to change that. I'm going to click on this little down arrow, and I'm going to say I would like to total something. I mean, I don't want to total customer name. That doesn't make any sense, but I do want to total the cost. I do want the sum of this. You can do other things. I mean, you could do the average or maximum or minimum, but I do want the sum of this. And the last thing that you want to do is tell it where you want it to show this. Now, most people expect a total to be at the bottom of a column of numbers, so I always put it in the footer. So I would have to do in group footer here. So I have my total on cost, sum, group footer. What I'm going to notice is, if I scroll down a little, it put a formula here. It also created a new section, which is customer ID footer. I did not have that before. And it put this formula here, which looks a lot like an Excel formula, equal sign sum, right? We're used to that. Instead of a range of cells, we give it a field cost that we want to sum up. If I look at the result, I can see what it's done is it's actually put a subtotal here. Now the important thing, it's broken out by customer because I put it in the customer ID. So what it did is for each new customer, it did a new subtotal. Another thing I like to do is when I'm going to go back to design, when I have a subtotal, I kind of like to differentiate it with a little bit of a line so it's not just there and it looks like another number. So I'm going to move this down just a tiny bit, and I'm going to go to design here. I want my line control, so if I click on this little down arrow, I open up my controls box, and here's my line. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go put my line. I click and I drag. Okay, I let go. So I've got a line. Initially it comes in what's referred to as hairline, a very tiny width. I want it a little bit wider. So I'm going to go to Properties, and I'm going to find my border width. I'm going to change it from hairline. You can go 1 or 2 point. 2 points relatively wide. I'm going to go with 2 point, see how that looks. I'm going to close my Properties window now. I'll view my report again, and there's my line. So anyhow, I could change around some fonts, make this a little prettier, but for the most part, that is a relational report based on 3 tables. It has a subtotal, it has a line, so it does have a lot of the components of the things that you're going to have to do for your homework. I want to bring up one more file. It's going to be the dentist database, and I'm going to do a report on that is going to be even more similar to what you need to do for your homework. Alright, this is your dentist database. This is a pretty complex relational database. It has 6 different tables. If I go to Database Tools Relationships, I can see the relationships between all these tables. Again, you don't have to worry too much about creating this. We're just going to use it. So I'm going to close out this relationship window. I'm going to take a look. This is the report that we're going to try to make. Okay. Again, I notice whenever I have to make an access report, especially if it's a relational report, I kind of scope it out pretty closely before I get in and look at what I need. I know I need patient name. I need dentist last name. I need visit date, procedure description, procedure cost. I note it does have a subtotal down here, and I'm pretty cautious. I look and I see the subtotal is based on visit ID. It's not based on patient, so it doesn't wait until I get through the entire patient and put a total down here. It does one by visit ID. That's important to note. The other thing that I'm going to note is I don't really have a field called patient name. I have patient first name and patient last name, but this report calls for patient name, which means I'm going to have to concatenate patient first name and patient last name. Anyhow, those are some of the things I'm going to have to do. So let's get into Access and start to do them. I'm going to say Create. I'm going to go to the Report Wizard. And again, like the bike database, I just start picking out the information that I need from the dentist table. Excuse me, I want the patients table first. From the patients table, I know I needed first name and last name. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that over. From the dentist's table, I believe I only needed dentist last name. From the visits table, I needed visit date. And from the procedures table, I needed procedure description and procedure cost. I'm going to go back to my report just for a second and make sure I didn't forget anything. So I got the patient name, got the dentist last name, visit date, procedure description, procedure cost. So okay, I've got everything. So I say, all right, I've selected all the fields I need. I'm going to go to Next. Now, what it does, because the default is by the patient's table, it says, all right, I think you want patient first name and patient last name broken out for your first level of grouping, and then you want dentist last name and visit date, and then you want procedure description and procedure cost. Turns out that is what I want. Again, if I look at the report, I see it is my patient name and then dentist and visit date and then the procedure and the cost. So I kind of verify that. I say, yeah, that's what I want. Now remember, you can pick other tables and get other groupings, but in this case, I do want this one. For your homework, you have to also do a dentist report that's based on dentist. So in that case, you might select this one up here. But for our report we're doing right now, it is by patient. So I'm going to select that grouping. I'm going to say Next. Like always, it asks me if I need any additional grouping. Basically, if you can't get what you want from this first window and you go to this second window, you can be very specific in other grouping. But since we got the grouping we wanted, I'm just going to keep going and select Next. I'm not going to sort this by any particular manner. I'm going to go Next. Remember, we talked last time in the bike report, pretty much any relational report, you do want to make it as outline. I'm going to hit Next, and I'm going to put Patients Report by Chris Ford. When you do your homework, actually do include your name in your report. So it would be Patients Report by whatever your name is. So I say, this is what I want. I hit Finish, and it's going to bring it up in a report view. And again, what I'm going to get is it's going to be close. It's not going to be exact. I notice it's got patient first name and patient last name. I know I've got to concatenate that into patient name. I do have it broken out the way I want it. I've got my dentist name, my visit, procedure description and procedure cost. There is no subtotal yet. So mainly what we're going to be working on is how do I do the concatenation here, how do I get my subtotal here. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to close my print preview. That puts me into design view. Whenever you want to do a concatenation, what you have to do is you have to bring down a text box. So again, I'm going to go up here to my controls, and I am going to click on this text box and just bring it in here. What I get is I get two parts to it. One is where I'm going to put my formula, and the other part is where I'm going to put my text that's describing this formula. Kind of important, sometimes what people do is they say, well, I want to concatenate patient first name and patient last name, so I'll delete these first and then I'll bring down the text box. Problem with that is if you delete these first, it actually deletes the group because there's nothing in the group. So do make sure you do the concatenation first, and once you get it and it's working, then delete the patient first name and patient last name. I usually make this box real wide at first so I can see the entire formula. I'm going to go ahead and type in the formula, then we'll talk about that. Alright, what I typed in here for my formula, you do have to start with an equal sign. Anytime you have a field that has spaces in the name, like it's patient space first space name is the name of the field, you have to put square brackets around that so Access understands that it is a field. So I've got equal sign, patient first name, plus, quote, space quote, that'll put a space between the first and the last name, plus, square bracket, patient last name. So I type all that in there. Now I'm going to go to View, Report View, and I see it is working. If it doesn't work, usually it's just because you've spelled something wrong, you forgot a square bracket, you forgot a plus sign. So, be patient with it. If it doesn't work, if it comes up and it gives you an error, a lot of times it'll do something like this. Like let's say I spelled something wrong, and I go to look at this, report view, it comes up and it says enter parameter value, patent first name. It's trying to tell you, hey, I don't know what this is. Usually at that point I cancel, I look a little closer, and I find, oh, okay, I did make a mistake. So these things have to be exact. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to get rid of this text box, and I'm going to type out my title, which is patient first name. Actually, that's patient name. Now I can go ahead and delete these because I don't need them anymore. So they're gone. I can move this up a little. Maybe move this over a little. And again, I could make this into Times New Roman font or a larger font, but you already know how to do that. I'm going to go Report View, and I see, okay, patient name Sue Snyder. Dentist name is Payne Franklin. Get down to my new patient, Will Robinson. So this seems to be working fine. Next thing I want to focus on then is the subtotal. Now, as I mentioned when we were looking at this report, it's very critical for you to scrutinize closely where that subtotal is. After each visit, there is a total. Okay? So this patient, Sue Snyder, she had 2 different visits. So I got a total for each visit. It didn't total it up for the patient, it totaled it up by the visit. That's important. When I go to Access and we do our grouping and sorting, I have 2 choices. I can put in this total based on the patient ID, or I can put it in on the visit ID. For this particular report, you want to be careful that you use the visit ID. If you use the patient ID, it's going to work, but it's going to give you a different total than the one that was asked for. So I'm going to go down to visit ID. I'm going to say more. With no totals, I'm going to say, well, I want a total. I want to do my procedure cost. And again, I want it in the group footer. I realize on the screen you might not be able to see that, but it is the last option. You just click on Show Subtotal in Group Footer. Okay, so I'm good with that. I notice I have my procedure cost down here now. If I look at my report, I have a procedure cost. If I wanted to kind of follow up and do the line, I'm going to go back to design view. I'm going to say, okay, I want my line here. So I click my down arrow to get access to that. I put in my line. I believe in this report I also have text to describe what I'm doing. So if I want that, I can bring down a label. Do be careful, don't bring down a text box in this case. A text box gives you two boxes. It gives you the actual label and then it gives you a place for a field. The label is just if you want a title. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in total procedure cost. I typed in total procedure cost. I'll go take a look at it. And so now I've got my nice subtotal. I've got my title here, total procedure cost. I've got my name that's concatenated. Again, I might go in here and play with the fonts, make them a little bit prettier. But for now, that pretty much covers everything I need to do to complete this one report. The last thing I just wanted to show you, because it is part of your homework for another report, is sometimes you want to put a rectangle around a part of your report to make it more noticeable. I'm just going to try that, and this I'll put it around the entire patient name. You do have in your controls a rectangle. So if I go ahead and I just click on that and then I click and drag it around my entire name here, what I get is a rectangle, but it blocks out my name. So I need to go to my property sheet on my rectangle, and what I need to do is I need to change my back style property from normal to transparent. And what that'll do is it'll still put the rectangle around the item, but it will make it transparent. I could also increase the width like we did with the line. Could go to 1 point or 2 point. If I take a look at that now, I see I do have a rectangle around that whole name there. Anyhow, hopefully this has been useful to you. Your homework that you need to do, one of the reports you need to do is the one that I just described in this video. The other one that you need to do is still based on the dentist database, but it's the report by dentist. So let's scope this one out just a little bit. It is going to be broken out by dentist. I notice the dentist name has been concatenated. I notice there is a rectangle around the dentist's name. I notice there is a total procedure cost, but it is not by visit date. It is by dentist. So do make sure when you put this in, you put it in the right place. Anyhow, hopefully this has been helpful. We'll see you next time.